Hi, and welcome to the Teaching Our Kid podcast, a place where parents, teachers, and everybody in between can learn about how kids learn. Hi, Becki.
Hi, Ashton. 12 podcasts, 12 episodes.
It's like pat on the back.
Yeah.
It's very it's a commitment. And
but it's been fun.
Yeah, I love doing this. So, like I said, I have 2 more ideas earlier, so we'll see what I bring you next. But yeah, so this podcast that we've been doing, this 12 episode thing, has kind of been about navigating education, public school versus unschooling in America. We've been focusing on, because I know it's different in other countries. So we're going to do like a little recap here. The first episode we kind of just talked about, we defined public schooling and unschooling, and we talked about some of their differences and similarities, some of the foundations and philosophies that those things are surrounded. So real quick, I'm just going to say that for the public school, it's basically like the government-funded education system that most people default choose because they don't have to pay, or they already pay through their taxes. And so that's what public schooling is. What do you want to give a little quick unschooling definition to recap?
It's definitely self-funded. And I would say it's probably the closest thing to like how kids were taught like when the country was first being developed, right? So kids are learning things that they need, like kind of think of homesteading. So our children are learning the skills, the life skills that they need as they need them. So we're not using a curriculum to structure their learning. If they decide like, I want to go to the store and they need to figure out how much change they're supposed to have, like that's when we talk about math.
Very cool. And one thing we never really talked about, which I was curious about last night when I was making my little flowcharts, what is there anything you have to do for the state of Maryland that legally, like, what do you have to do for that to, like, say we're unschoolers, they are getting, this is how we're doing it? What's the process for that?
So it's very similar for all homeschooling families. Baltimore or Maryland does allow unschooling, so you have to definitely check out your state laws because not every school or not every state allows unschooling. But for homeschooling in general, you have to report to the state of Maryland twice a year. Mm-hmm. For progressive schooling methods like unschooling, we find it easier to report to the state via an umbrella. So if you're not in an umbrella, you would be given a review to complete where you have to turn in a portfolio of all of your child's work. And then you do an interview with a state associate and you kind of walk them through it. And that happens twice a year. The second option is to report under an umbrella. So we pay an annual fee. And the umbrella is very familiar with different types of schooling methods. And so they give us what we need to complete so that they can then report to the state for us. So you can imagine that this person that runs the umbrella is able to speak pretty articulately about unschooling because, like I said, when we're not learning through curriculum, I don't have a lot of workbooks and worksheets that we do.
Right, you don't have like a progress measuring tool to show. Yeah,
I just take a picture every time they do something, and then I fill out a small sheet, and we have a half review one time a year, and then a full review another. And we're allowed to use our Instagram page to show progress, and we can just talk about the different things that we do as they relate to different subjects that, from the traditional school method. But we find it really easy it's like $150 for the year for all children. So I don't have to pay per child.
Oh, that's nice. It's for your household.
Yeah. So it's a really reasonable fee for us to pay. And then we don't have to explain to the city every time what unschooling is.
That's like your unschooling advocate.
Exactly.
to
That's a
the
great
government,
word to
like
use
to,
for,
yeah, okay.
yeah.
That's cool. Thank you. I didn't know why we haven't talked about that yet, and I'm glad I
That's a
remembered.
good point. We haven't brought it up, but if you are considering homeschooling of any sort, it's definitely something that you need to look into with your state before making the dive.
Right, because different states have different rules and stipulations
Hmm.
on, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. That definitely probably should have been in our first episode, but at least we've added it here.
I feel like
Um,
we may have talked about it, but who knows?
yeah,
Anyway, moving
that was
on.
that was a good summation. Thank you. So then our second episode we talked about reading, and that was our longest episode because I was crazy and had all kinds of information.
Mm.
But reading
I
is
would like to report my 9-year-old is avidly reading now.
yes,
He is into it, and it has been a magical process to watch.
it is fun. I do you want to know something? Well, Lily is 8, um, and I feel like she liked reading before, and like,
Mm.
but I feel like she has hit the I get it now.
Ah,
I'm like I don't know she's like into the chapter, but like she's just I just can see a correlation between him starting and when it has really like I see her like the most motivated ever to do it.
right.
Is what I want to
The
say. The
interest, it's
age.
like as their skill progresses slowly, the interest kind of follows,
Mm-hmm.
which I this Tegan being my first kid learning how to read on his own was very nerve-wracking for me, right? Like we talked about a lot of this in the reading
Mm-hmm.
podcast, how social stigma has made it a very like nervous process for us to kind of sit through and live in. Um, but I think what I meant to say is like during that process, I wanted to like kind of spark his interest first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how it works. Like he
Yeah.
needed to feel that confidence in reading before he gained interest and started doing it more frequently.
Yeah.
And it's all been on his, when I pushed it, he pushed back. So
Mm-hmm.
I just stopped and it's all been on his own. So I think we're only up from here.
Yeah. Very, very cool. It's definitely cool when they start reading, man. I
Yeah, it's
love it.
fun.
All right. So let's see. Where's my notes here? Our third episode was probably one of my favorites, the social emotions
Mm.
episode. We went into that. We did a lot in there.
We went off on some paths, didn't we?
Yeah, well, that one almost even is a more parenting centered than school centered.
Yeah.
And it's definitely like it's the heart. It's I feel like it's the heart of unschooling. It's a lot of why you choose to teach your kids that way because that is the most important thing to teach your kids to you, even more than the academic skills. It's why you choose to have them at home and learning the way they do. So it's definitely it was my favorite episode.
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed that one too, just because of the science behind it. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of science there, but also I think just as a parent myself, I really enjoyed my process of kind of unlearning, managing, my emotions the way that I was kind of taught, right? So unlearning that and teaching, like being patient with myself, and it's been a process in kind of exhibiting for my kids how you can manage your own emotions, which is really how they learn the best. So like to learn for myself and also teach my kids has been a challenge, a struggle, but also very rewarding.
Yeah, like the most rewarding. I agree.
Yeah.
It's always, I feel like they grow and it just gets more and more dynamic and difficult.
Dynamic is a good word, actually.
All
It's a
right.
loaded word.
Yes. It's a loaded topic. All right. So then we did episode 4, which is about learning styles, which I also really like because I have a lot of information on my blog about the learning styles. When I taught, I used a lot of that core
Hmm.
stuff. We talk about how in Unschool you can be more flexible for those learning styles than they can be in public schools. And really quick, the learning styles are, just for a review, read write learners, auditory learners, kinesthetic learners, and oh my gosh, visual learners.
Visual, yeah. I was gonna say we forgot visual.
Yeah, so that is also a very cool topic, and definitely something to think about when you're deciding what kind of school you want to choose for your kid. The best way that they learn, my kids also, really quick before I go into that, I feel like sometimes school will shape their learning style too. Because I feel like maybe Harry wouldn't be as much of a like reading, writing, learning style kid if he wasn't in public school, because
Mm.
they're so strong in that. Like I feel like he
Because
might.
it probably suggests that he's quite flexible and
Right,
resilient, that he may have, may be a visual learner, but is able to be flexible and kind of mold to the way that they learn,
right,
the way that they're trying to teach him.
right. And I even think that way about myself as a learner too. Like
Yeah,
maybe I would have learned faster or something if I would have been given a different way of, or a different
sure.
learning
Yeah, for
style.
sure.
So it's definitely a cool topic. All right, I'm just pushing on. Episode 5, we did parenting styles,
Mm,
which was also a very cool episode.
yeah.
I think people don't realize how, when you're in your own stuff, you don't realize how different other people around you are doing it. I guess, I don't
Hmm.
know. And it definitely has an impact on how your kids are taught and learn in public school and at home. Um, because different parenting styles mean kids will react differently to the confines of school or to the freedom of unschooling. So,
Well, it also largely affects their social, emotional
mm-hmm.
being and the way that they kind of perceive life and how they'll parent when they're older, because
Right.
that's how, like we talked about in the social emotional episode, the way that we are emotionally has a lot to do with how we were parented.
Yeah, 100%. It also, parenting
It's like
style
I
could also affect their learning style, like the way they learn and the way, parenting style affects a lot of things.
yeah,
So,
agreed.
all right. Then let's see. Episode 6, we did extracurricular activities
Hmm.
in public school versus unschool, which I know this is a big deal because a lot of people, we kind of talked about that stigma of unschooling being like,
How
oh,
are they
your
going to
kids
be
aren't
socialized?
socialized. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas actually, the complete opposite. As long as you are doing your job, they get even more socialization sometimes than the public
yeah.
schoolers get. So definitely a cool subject to talk about. Then let's see, we did episode 7 was bullying and building resilience in kids, and just kids experiencing it in public school versus it in unschooling. We talked about the different strategies that school uses to help curb that, and
Hmm.
what they do to build the resilience. And we talked about like how you, with that social emotional piece being so strong for you guys, it's definitely, they build that resilience with that. And in school, I do that. My kids are in public school, but as a parent, I try and build that for them so they have more resilience.
Right.
But then there's some kids who don't have a good base of that. So what can the school do to help? And when we talked about the counselors, and that was a full, meaty episode too, I
Yeah,
think.
that's a hefty one. We just had I mean, we still experience it, even not being, still being at home. And anyone that has multiple children knows the sibling love. I mean, that they experience, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, we break it down to bullying, right? Like we had a friend over the other day, and um, Tegan was picking on his little brother, and his friend was laughing about it, and so was he. And his brother kind of was laughing, but it was because his friend was there, and it turned out to be like, I remember Tegan saying this exactly, but everyone was laughing, and I was like, but were they? It's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
no, Callan wasn't, and I was like, well, if everyone's not laughing, buddy, then
Right.
pretty pretty certain that that's bullying.
Yeah. I mean, and well, the brother sister thing. I mean, that's the tough, because I feel like a parrot or a broken record some days. I'm
Yes.
like, you guys do the same thing, but they
Keep
just
your hands to
yeah.
yourself. Keep your hands to yourself. Just need a button, like the Staples button, like the easy button, like, one that I can hit with that's already
Yeah, like
preloaded
a
with
pull string with my voice.
don't throw shit in the house. Keep your hands to yourself. Shut the damn door.
Oh man, I love it. All right. Oh, let's see. Okay, episode 8 was screen time, which was
Oh,
also a good, that's very relevant topic here because, oh, and I wanted to talk about that because I just had my kids like well child checkups for like the year.
oh, tell me.
And they have like a checklist for you to do every time, which is basically like all the questions the doctor wants to ask you, like, yeah, like basically, are you making healthy choices for your kid? And they're all
Right.
like, and one of them was like, how do you limit screen time to 2 hours per day? Which I know in our screen time episode, we did a whole breakdown of statistics and like,
Right.
and I answered no.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and I was like, she was talking to me about it and talking to the kids and making sure they were like doing physical things too and not just like living a sedentary life. But then I realized too that I do limit it. I just don't limit it to 2 hours a day because they don't get it at all during the school week. But then I
Mm.
give them kind of unlimited on the weekends. Like I make them take
Right.
breaks. But so at first I was like feeling bad and I was like, wait a minute, I do limit a lot. Like
Yeah.
some kids get it anytime. Like the one kid at the bus stop was pouting this morning. He was playing his Oculus instead of making his lunch this morning. And so he didn't get what he
Mm.
wanted in his lunch. And I'm like, I can't imagine letting my kid play with their Oculus before school. Like
I don't even know what an Oculus is.
oh, you don't?
No.
It's the 3D
Oh.
video
Okay.
game
Gotcha.
like goggle things.
Right. Gotcha.
So yeah, I just can't imagine letting my kid play video games in the morning. Like I would never, they would never
You
be
wouldn't get
ready.
anything done. Yeah.
I have hard enough time getting them ready. I mean, maybe they would be really motivated and be ready really early than if I
Mm-hmm.
said you had to get everything ready before you did that. But no.
It's funny, or it's not funny, but interesting that the only reason that they're concerned about limiting screen time is to make sure they're also supporting like a physical or active lifestyle, because there's so much other research out right now linking excessive screen time to like poor behavior, poor sleep patterns, and many other
Well,
things,
they might
and
be
like lack
concerned
of
about that
social
too,
skills.
but she didn't
But
address any of that really. But I
sure,
agree.
yeah. That's interesting. We are personally, screen time. I think we may have talked about this in the episode, but it really is like it ebbs and flows in our house. And right now, we went away for a trip to Vegas without our kids. Like all three kids were. It was the first time that we'd left the
That'd be
baby.
nice.
It was fun. It was weird. We probably stayed one day too long, I think. But because we were away, I don't like to give my babysitters like many restrictions, right? I want them to do what's easiest for them because they're doing me the biggest favor in the
Mm-hmm.
world.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes with excessive amounts of screen time,
Oh
like
yes.
excessive. Like I can't believe they still had brains when we came home
I feel
because
that way some weekend days when it's raining and we're inside and I'm just like, go for it. And then they're like
right.
zombies.
And now we're still trying to come off of it.
The detox.
It's like they're still getting more than I generally prefer. However, there's been like a lot going on and it's been easier to just say yes. So like I think I want to like put a note here. Whatever I said in that episode, like it ebbs and flows. And I think everyone should be really just gentle with themselves about beating
Mm-hmm.
yourself up too much about I gave my kid too much electronics, because it's definitely like a socially charged topic that people can be very judgy about. So don't let people
Yes.
judge you. Do what's right for you.
As long as my number one thing, as long as you're like teaching them how like the safety or like
Yeah,
modeling, that's my biggest thing is like showing them the right way to use it and trying to use it the right way yourself too.
right,
Obviously, some days we use it more than others too, like that phone on it. So,
right.
yes. All right. Let's see. So that was episode 8. Episode 9, we talked about, challenging topics parents face during your childhood school years. That's where we talked about just different topics being taught in school, like pronouns and sex education. And then we talked a little bit about school shootings and different things. And that's definitely a tough topic. And I did talk about the statistics in that one about why people choose to unschool. And one of the biggest ones is like that school environment and safety. And
Yeah.
so we dived into a lot of statistics in that episode. If you're curious about any of them, I have the resources in that. And all these episodes are linked, so you can go back and look. Let's see. Then we did episode 10, and that was the one where you went on your trip, and it was I was trying to get that in there, but we did the interviews with the kids.
Oh, yes.
And, you get what you get. Because mine were, it's tough too. But, so the interviews, that was cool. We kind of interviewed our kids about what they think about how they're learning and what they do for school. And I thought it was cool. Some of their answers were similar, especially like, where do you find, what do you do for your information? It was like, ask mom or dad. And both of them sort of answered the same way. I would love to do that one again, maybe when they're older.
Yeah.
All of our kids.
I'd love to get them on camera. Like, even just to have them both, have all 4 of them on camera, like, let them ask each other the questions or something,
that would
right? And see how their answers differ.
That would definitely be cool. Maybe we can redo that and we'll add it on to there or something.
Okay.
One day in the future. I would like that. And especially I would love to redo it when they're older, just to see what their thoughts are,
Right.
When they're in high school and if they're still doing it or not, or.
Yeah. Who knows?
All right. So, and then, like I said, we missed the math episode. We actually did it, but it didn't record the sound. So sorry about that.
But it was very similar to reading.
Yes, it was. A lot of the same things. But then, let's see. So I wanted to end this with some resources, because a lot of this that we've created is kind of for someone who is thinking about choosing school. Deciding if they want to do unschooling or homeschooling, which we talk about some because it's so similar to unschooling, or public school. So at the end here, I have made a couple flow charts, which I'm going to put up for you guys. The one is unschooling for your family. And then I have like little questions, and it says yes or no, and you follow it down. And, so it might tell you, it kind of sums up everything we've talked about in a little flow chart. Then I have one is public schooling for your family. So I will put those up here too. I definitely want to add on to the unschooling one, though, about, have you looked at your state's regulations and requirements? Like, because if you live somewhere and
might not be available to you.
Right. So definitely that needs to be added on there. And then I also have a lot of resources. I found a whole list. I think I have like 10 websites here for both public school parents and those interested in unschooling. I have the National Center for Education Statistics, which we looked at. It has all the data and statistics on who chooses to unschool or homeschool versus that's where we looked there. Great Schools, which has all the information on K through 12 schools, including ratings and reviews from parents and
that's
data
a good one.
On academic performance. So that's like all for public school stuff. Then I have a website called School Digger that lets parents search and compare schools based on stuff like test scores and rankings and demographics. Let's see. There's a PTA website, which is a resource for parents involved. It gives guides and articles and tools to help you engage with your child's school and education, which I think is pretty cool. You got the U.S. Department of Education, obviously, because the governments run the schools. Gives like all the federal education policies, initiatives, resources. That probably would let you know if your state allows homeschooling and unschooling or not, I would imagine.
Right.
Then your state Department of Education, the same thing. Websites. Another resource that people don't really look into when you're looking for schools. Well, you went to open house for some schools in your area, but you can, like, a lot of public schools might even have open houses or websites you can go look at to see, what you're getting yourself into. I'm sure there's some for unschooling too, where, like, your umbrella, I'm sure they have kind of a thing set up that would.
Yeah, I think, honestly, what's been the best resource for us, which takes time to kind of find, is like our social community, right? So Eric actually went to, what kind of kicked this all off is he had an interest in unschooling, and then he went to a talk given by I think she's a PhD professor in maybe English, but she unschools, and she gave a talk down the road, and that's where he started to meet the folks in our neighborhood who also unschool, and we're really lucky to have such there's 5 different families that unschool, which is, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're unschooling and doing such a really unknown thing, that it's a great support system. And so we learned about the umbrella through them. We learned all about homeschooling and unschooling through them, and that kind of pushed us in the right direction. But for those of folks who are still trying to consider this, Facebook is a great place to start.
Social media groups.
Yeah, so the social media groups are awesome just to explore what's available to you. Because also, you want to make sure that if you're deciding to unschool, you're going to take on, or homeschool period, and you're able to stay home, being with your kids 24/7, especially if you're coming from a full-time work schedule, is a huge shift. And while it is a lovely one, and that's one of the reasons that we do it, I have to make sure that I have time for myself too. And so another way of putting this that my good friend who's also an unschooler mom said is, their children can't be with me 24/7 because they're only going to learn about the world through my eyes. And so I need to find ways to give them outlets to be away from me where they can learn and explore the world with other people, but that also gives me that space once a week, twice a week, to do my own thing, whether it's read a book or get the groceries done. So
record a podcast
or record a podcast a month. So Facebook is a great place to start, but then some other really awesome resources that we use are the outdoor schools that are around here. And we have a lot in Baltimore, like our National Aquarium. We have this Maryland Science Center where we have memberships, and the zoo. We have memberships that we can get to regularly. They also have homeschool classes there that you can sign up for. And then we use Groupon a lot because homeschooling can be costly if you're, paying money to go do something every day. So using Groupon to get deals, we got half off on our Science Center membership, which is amazing because there's, it's a huge family and you don't want to pay for every kid the full price. So that's been really helpful too. Lastly, the other thing I want to say is if you decide to unschool or homeschool, find a good thrift shop, because books galore, all sorts of fun stuff that is very affordable and kids will keep themselves busy with for very little money.
Oh, yes. Good thrift shop, good library.
Yeah, the library system as well. That's another resource that we use regularly. And we kind of have gone on a library tour. We're trying to explore different libraries right now and get ourselves kind of familiar with all the libraries in Baltimore. But they also have these classes that you can attend. They tend to be more on the weekends, but they have children's rooms and things like the playaways that are audiobooks that kids can listen to, all that support early childhood reading. You don't just have to throw a book in front of your kid's face. And often they have activities for children as well. So they can go and do building blocks there. They can do puzzles. What else do the kids do? They have stacking cups. It's not just going and forcing your kids to read it. It's making that place a fun experience, a fun environment to be in.
I would also imagine, like, as your kids get older, which I want this for my kids in public school too, but like looking for mentors who are not you, like you mentioned earlier,
Right.
but like that can teach them other things. Like one of the books I read, I forget the name of it. I'll put it on the screen when I edit this. But basically, his sons, they live up in Vermont or whatever, and they had like neighbors that taught them hunting and all
Yeah.
kinds of like things. Like they had other, like they almost bartered with people around them to help teach their kids certain skills that they
Right.
couldn't teach them. And that's another resource. Like I'm sure with that umbrella, there might be, maybe one of the other moms in the group, like how you do the summer camp thing. And there's
Right.
something you could teach that they, don't teach, or vice versa,
Yeah,
with
that's
you
a really good
guys
point.
and the cleaning company when they get older, maybe some other kids might want to come learn about how you run the company or clean,
Right.
and that's a skill your kids are going to learn, but maybe some other kids, you could be a mentor for somebody else in that community, a
We even
resource.
you were bringing up a memory for me that happened within my mom group, maybe not among the children, but just for the moms. One mom is a psychologist, and one
Mm-hmm.
mom is an artist, and um, the psychologist, they traded services. So the
Mm-hmm.
psychologist was able to help her with one of the kids, and the mom was able to help the psychologist learn a new skill.
Yeah.
So that definitely happens, but applying it to the kids is a great idea. And I think you're right that as they get a little bit older, we'll probably see that happen more.
Yeah, definitely. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So, yeah, and that was one of my other resources. It's like professional education consultants. Obviously, they're not professional education, but like a professional psychologist or, your whatever you are an expert in will help be a resource, I guess. So very cool. I think that's all. I really am going to do another little insert here. I might, with me talking about my little flowcharts that I made, just so, people can see them, for the unschooling and public school. And eventually I want to make like a little, what do you call it? Like a workbook that people can use when they're trying to make this decision too for their education. Like,
Yeah.
have you thought about this? Here's your notes. Here's a list of the resources that you might need to make it happen for yourself. Like, I am going
I,
to compile that eventually.
I do have, I think it came to me after I looked at your flowcharts, but I do have one comment. I think the first decision making, if you on the flowchart, like the
Mm-hmm.
first question that uh, folks are asking themselves is your child's social and emotional health, important, more
Mm-hmm.
important to you than school? And I think most parents are going to say yes,
Yes to that. Yeah.
right? So I think another question that parents really have to kind of assess if homeschool is an option for you, um, is what do you want for your child the most, and
Mm-hmm.
do you think that the traditional school system can provide that better than you can, right?
Right.
Like,
That's a good way
and
to word it. That's why I asked you to look at that because I
yeah, because like most parents, most good parents are going, you of
yes.
course we're concerned with our children's social and emotional health, but and then there's something else to do with that's coming to me now, that like just because teachers are trained as teachers and have, college education about how to teach, doesn't mean that you can't do that yourself, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
have you explored alternative methods, right? Because, of course, trying to teach your child in a traditional fashion at home, it doesn't always go well with parents, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
this. If you try and teach your kid anything, the second that happens, they push back. So, have you like what other methods of learning have you explored?
Mm-hmm.
And so that might be a good place for people to start, like learning about unschooling, and is it a method that you think is viable for your
Right.
kids or your family?
Exactly. Do your due diligence and research what you're really getting yourself into.
Right, because just because you don't, like, if say you think that, you know the traditional school isn't a place for your child, it doesn't mean that then all of the pressure is on you, because
Right.
right, like you have systems around you within within your community, within your family, that can help you. And teaching kids isn't like, you don't have to have a degree in order to be able to teach your kids something, right? So
Right.
yes, I think I'm trying to empower people who are trying to make that decision, that you are capable of doing it, and it
Right.
does require time and energy, but you have the full ability to teach your kids what they need, to become a fully functioning and valuable member of society.
Yes, I agree. Very cool.